Okay, and we are live, but you all know the drill. Let the stream breathe just for a couple of seconds. Make sure we're getting green check marks across the board. Welcome in, everybody, to the Huddle Up podcast, presented as always by Mile High Huddle, powered by Overtime Media. I'm your host, Chad Jensen, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime. You know him, you love him, my fellow football priest. He is Zack Kelberman. Zack, we knew when we signed off on Thursday that the next time we'd be talking to the community, a lot of water would have passed under that bridge, as they say. A lot was going to happen at least Saturday, but you and I knew that things would start popping as early as Thursday night, but definitely Friday. And then, of course, the deadline for the roster cuts being Saturday. But, you know, I don't think we could have predicted Todd Davis was going to get cut. But at the same time, and, you know, if you were looking for a profile of a player who kind of fit the bill of a salary cap dump on the doorstep of the season, someone that the team could arguably, I'm not saying I agree with it, but arguably get by without, he kind of checked all those boxes. But you wrote an article at milehighhuddle.com, and I want to serve this over to you, that was straight fire. The gut reaction to Todd Davis getting cut by the Denver Broncos, and obviously did really well for the site. Tons of engagement, a lot of comments at milehighhuddle.com. For those who might have missed the written version, give fans your gut reaction to that fateful decision to pass on Todd Davis.
I just don't like cutting your leading tackler from last season, an integral part of Vic Fangio's run defense, probably the most integral part, 10 days before the season opener. I understand he might have been a little too highly paid, even though for a starting inside linebacker, making $5 million per year is actually a steal compared to some other contracts around the NFL. But what message does it send to the locker room? That if you play well, we won't reward you. If we draft you, we won't pay you. And it just seems like, what is the last Broncos player who got a second contract? If you have to rack your brain and think about it, Chad, that's a problem in itself. And I just don't like... And it's not even a lateral move, because you have to combine the forces now of Josie Jewell and Mark Barron and A.J. Johnson to equal one Todd Davis. They're all run stuffers for the most part. Mark Barron's not that great in coverage. So Todd Davis, I'm one of his biggest critics. I can't be hypocritical and sit on both sides of the fence here, but he was really good for what he did. He was a captain of the team. He was a link to Super Bowl 50. Broncos don't have any left except for Von Miller. He was well-respected in the locker room, a great two-down player, one of the best inside linebackers against the run in the NFL. Why would you release him? To save some money, when to push you over $30 million in salary cap space? What are you saving for? You're not going to use the money. You're going to sit on it now. And I don't want to hear the tinfoil, they're broke theory. They have cash on hand. This whole ownership, stigma, I don't agree with it. I just don't like the move. I don't like the message it sends. I understand he wasn't the best in pass coverage, but he did offer a lot of versatility for the Broncos against the run. And similar to the Broncos cutting TJ Ward in 2017, how are the players going to react to that? I mean, how are the veterans in that locker room going to react to that move? So that's what I wonder about, Judd.
Look, we have been critical of Todd Davis at times on this show because he's not a perfect linebacker. However, it's like I said on Twitter, I don't know who I was responding to, some follower that was upset about my take on the Todd Davis decision. He's not a great coverage linebacker, but the way that Fangio could deploy his coverages and his zones, like it could protect him in a sense. All right. He could do just enough to get by. We saw that late in the season last year when the defense finally came together. The problem is, Zack, for $4.5 million that you save on the salary cap, yeah, I get it. You dumped a little salary and you save some money on the cap. But in so doing, you dispensed with one of the best run defending linebackers in the NFL. Is he a three-down linebacker? I would welcome any and all arguments that on that front. I get it for those who say, well, he's not a three-down linebacker. Why are you getting all up in arms? Alexander Johnson, is he really ready to be a three-down linebacker? I'm not sure because of his coverage chops or lack thereof. But say what you will about Todd Davis, the one thing you can't take away from him, Zack, is he is one of the best run-defending linebackers in the league.
Yep.
In the league. So you got to wonder how that's going to affect things. And then, again, it wouldn't have been as big of a knee-jerk response, I think, from you and I on social media and, of course, with your written article, Zack, if this cut had come from a position of strength. If we were talking about a depth chart that was just a who's who, like even on the defensive line. Like if it was Shelby Harris who got cut, which he was another guy that would have potentially checked those boxes if they were looking to find the, resume of the prototype for a salary cap dump on the doorstep of the season, someone that was a veteran that they could live with getting by. Shelby Harris also fit that bill. If they would have cut Shelby Harris, though, it wouldn't have been as big of a reaction from either one of us, even though we probably still would have panned it, because you have Draymond Jones, because you have even DeMarcus Walker. You've got some options behind him, not to mention also Jarrell Casey, and you've got some depth there. Zach, when you get beyond Todd Davis, Alexander Johnson, beyond there, it really falls off a cliff. Now, there's always the chance that Josie Jewell, he took his lumps from losing his starting job last year, grew, learned a lot from it. He's got a full season in Vic Fangio's scheme under his belt. We could ostensibly see him take a step forward in his second year with Fangio and his third year in the league. But just based on what we've seen from him so far, he's an average linebacker at best, and he's nowhere near the run defending linebacker that Todd Davis is. And as you said, Mark Barron, his best days are behind him. He's got experience in coverage, but that doesn't make him good at it. So they're going to rotate him in on nickel packages, and you could have done that with Todd Davis on the roster. So, it's questionable, but at the end of the day, it's, as you brought up in the article, so similar to the TJ Ward cut a few years back.
You mentioned the timing. You mentioned the position of strength and like where the Broncos cut their fat from on the roster. I also bring up the timing. If Todd Davis wasn't considered in the Broncos' long-term plans, why not just cut him back in March or April? Why drag it out to the doorstep of the season and then cut your leading tackler? They didn't really address the position. We know Vic Fangio likes to develop guys in-house, and obviously he likes what Mark Barron brings to the table. But to cut such a well-respected guy in the locker room who's great at his job for what he brings to the table, to get what? To get Josie Jewell on the field, Mark Barron, Calitro, some no-name jag from the Bengals? You're going to cut a well-respected player who's one of the few two links left to your championship glory days? I just don't like the juju it brings to the table. I don't like the message it sends to the locker room. And this after, Todd Davis unceremoniously dumped by the Broncos in an offseason where they didn't lock down Justin Simmons. They didn't pay Phillip Lindsay, but they have no problem paying outside players, paying rival players, but not taking care of their own. At some point, they have to retain their own talent who they've developed and they've grown with, and they just don't want to do it, Chad.
I couldn't believe. Now, I picked a bad day for it, but I've been on vacation this week. It's normally we do this family reunion thing in the month of June, but because of the word that shall go unmentioned, it was pushed back, ended up being on the very day coinciding with final roster cut down. So I was juggling a lot of things. But Zach, on Saturday, I was stunned. John Elway's post-cut presser, not one question about Todd Davis. No one asked him about Todd Davis. But let me give you this quote that Vic Fangio had from Friday night following the stadium scrimmage. The Broncos did another stadium scrimmage Friday night. He said, quote, on what factors went into releasing Todd Davis, quote, just a lot of things. We had the ability. We signed Mark Barron. We picked up another guy in Austin Calitro. Just a lot of little things that added up. Unfortunately, we released Todd. I'm going to miss Todd. Todd was a great player here for many years, wishing him nothing but the best. We are going to miss him, close quote. And then, Zach, here's how it shook out. Linebackers are headed to a meeting. All of a sudden, Todd gets a phone call. Josie Jewell's like, he's like, I got to take this call. Walks out. He goes to his meeting. Todd doesn't show up, of course, because he just got told he's been cut. They don't see him again, and then word leaks out through the texting and stuff to the players that Todd Davis had been cut. He said, quote, this is Josie Jewell. He's been a great leader ever since I got here. He was like a brotherly figure to me, a father figure, he says, of Todd Davis. He led me along in the early years, that first season especially, really just showing me the ropes, helping me with the defense, teaching me how to act. It was all that kind of stuff. He's a great player and a great leader. And now I have a chance to follow in his shoes and play. And I'm looking forward to being able to play. I loved him and everything he stood for. Close quote. So Zach, the baton, the torch, if you will, is getting passed to Josie Jewell. And, when he was drafted in 2018 in the 4th round, we were optimistic, you and I, that he could be a long-term answer for this team at linebacker. Unfortunately, didn't have the greatest rookie campaign, but you kind of chalk that up to the growing pains and the learning curve and whatnot. And then he followed that up with a lackluster start to 2019, and then he gets injured and gets eventually replaced by Alexander Johnson. So I guess if we were putting a list of winners and losers from this weekend's cuts for the roster, you got to say Josey Jewell is one of the biggest winners that you would have to list there, because he now has carte blanche at a starting job. Unless he loses it, it's his to lose, to use Vic Fangio's kind of vernacular here. If Barron or Calitro somehow were to shine, but it would take Jewell doing something bad. It would take Jewell having a bad game or two, I think, to lose that starting job. So how are you feeling about the idea of a Josey Jewell, Alexander Johnson partnership here in base defense?
I don't have a choice. I have to just live with it. The Broncos obviously moved on from Davis, and they think Josey Jewell, the same Josey Jewell who most of Broncos country was writing off before this offseason, similar to how they signed Melvin Gordon. They're starting running off Phillip Lindsay now. Josey Jewell is a jag. He never is going to be, I think, at least in this system, what the Broncos drafted him to be. He's a lot like Todd Davis, where he's just good against the run and very questionable in pass coverage. If they cut Davis and they had a young, exciting inside linebacker on the roster, I'm not saying Devin White, but someone just a high caliber, high talent, high upside prospect, I would get on board with it. But you're cutting Todd Davis, your leading tackler, and promoting who? Josey Jewell, who's a jag, Mark Barron, who's a bust, and Austin Calitro, who's a nobody. So that's my problem with it. If you're going to cut the guy, at least have a viable replacement. You don't have Patrick Willis behind Todd Davis. You have the opposite of that, which is inconsistency and unproven talent. That's what I can't get on board with.
We'll continue to talk about this. Zeus McPeak jumping in from the top rope. Very generous super chat. Appreciate you, Stu. We call him Zeus at MHH, and you all know why. MHH Mount Rushmore member says, football is here. Thank God. And Stu, we appreciate my friend. Tonight, though, we have Miss Kristie. You know her, KR. Kristie's in the house with us. We're going to bring her on the show here in just 1 second. First, though, we got to do a couple of really quick matters of business, and then we're going to bring Kristie on and get her thoughts on some of these developments at Broncos HQ. And of course, any questions that you might have for Kristie or any topics you want to get her thoughts on, get it in the chat stream, any super chats, whatever, get them loaded up and we will get to them. John's waiting for that as we speak. But first, gang, got to remind you that tonight's episode here, sponsored by sportsbetting.com. Hopefully by now you have gone and entered the free $1 million pick'em contest by visiting sportsbetting.com. Guys, it's fun. It's easy. You get a chance to win that cheddar. Plus, there's money for the top 5 runners up. So go check that out when you get some time. Sportsbetting.com and enter to win the $1 million pick'em contest. All right, Zach, real quick before we grab Kristie, let me just make sure everyone is up to speed. Make sure you're following the pod on Twitter, gang, at HuddleUpPod. Also, the main account on Twitter, at Mile High Huddle. If you follow both those accounts on Twitter, you're not going to miss anything as it relates to the podcast or breaking Broncos news and analysis. Gentle reminder to head on over to huddleuppod.com and get your swag on. Get yourself one of these football priest hats. Get yourself one of the new polo tees that's out. The Let 'em Hate t-shirt that Zach designed. The Let 'em t-shirt that Zachary Smouse designed. The Mile High Huddle one. There's face masks, there's mugs, there's hoodies, there's a little something for everybody. It's another way that you can support what we're doing here at Mile High Huddle, bringing you this content on the daily. And if you're not in a position to do that, it's all good. Each and every one of you, these 3 things you can do. You can subscribe, you can like, and if you really love us, share this video, share this podcast episode out there. Help Mile High Huddle, help the Huddle Up podcast continue to grow and reach like-minded fans just like you. And then one last thing, shout out to our Facebook supporters. You can see them ticking along the bottom ticker there. We're going to do that throughout the show. Really appreciate you guys, how that's grown. We'll put the link for becoming a Facebook supporter if you're on Facebook in the chat stream. But it's pretty simple. Just go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. You'll see the blue button. Easy as that. Appreciate our Facebook supporters. All right, Zach, it's time to bring her on. She's a legend in this community. Everybody knows Kristie, and she debuted. She was the first superstar segment, and we've been waiting to get her back on the show, yes. And we finally had the stars align. Kristie, thank you for making some time for us here tonight. How are you?
Good. I'm good. How are you guys?
We're still rolling with the punches. First and foremost, we got to know, what was your take? Are Zach and I making too much of this Todd Davis thing? Do we need to take a chill pill and just kind of find the silver lining? What was your take on that?
Well, I mean, initially it's a shocker. I mean, you never want to see a a veteran like Todd Davis get waived. But I mean, I think we just have to deal with it. It's over. He's gone. So it is what it is. I don't know how Josie Jewell's gonna fill that role, but I think we don't really have a choice. So
We've said that so many times lately in the last couple of years about Broncos issues. Let's get it over with. It's over with. Vance Joseph, Joe Flacco.
yeah.
Now it's Todd Davis.
This is true. One thing we got Mr. Boggins real quick jumping in on Super Chat. Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you.
Really means a lot. Very generous. One of our superstars says, "Hey, can't wait for Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, and Hunter Henry to steal our linebackers' wallets and souls this season. Hashtag yay, football is back." And, to that point, I'll put on some orange colored glasses for a second here and point out that, look, Fangio's specialty that he built his career on that allowed him to kind of climb the ladder to become a defensive coordinator, it was as a linebackers coach. We've talked about his resume on this show many times, and there's a reason why linebackers tend to thrive in his scheme, and including Todd Davis. I mean, Todd Davis led the team last year in tackles, even though he missed the first, 2 weeks at least with his calf. He still went over triple digits in tackles, and of course, Alexander Johnson emerged as a bona fide stud. So here's to hoping that some of that, I guess, Vic Fangio, linebacker dust can get sprinkled on Josie Jewell. But Kristie, one of the things that jumped out to me when we're talking about winners and losers over the weekend was the fact that Jake Butt made this roster. So look, I'll be the first one to say I didn't expect De'Vante Bausby to get cut. So I'm not, I got to eat some crow on that.
Sensitive
But one
subject.
thing I'll do a little bit of this, tap myself on the back here, because I had a feeling Jake Butt, if he could stay healthy, he was making this roster. Because again, the biggest thing was the team was so long suffering and patient with him. They kept him around for a reason, and he stayed healthy. What do you think is in store for Jake Butt this year, Kristie?
Well, I'm very excited about Jake Butt. I've been a fan of his since he's been on the team, and they did keep him around for a reason. They have some insider's knowledge on what he has to offer, and I'm excited about seeing what he does have.
Zach, I know you weren't expecting to see Jake Butt stick around. What was your reaction?
Homie, and you keep Beck on top of that, so I just don't see what Butt can bring to the table that you don't have in Albert O or Noah Fant or any other tight end on the roster. I mean, Kristie is a big fan of Jake Butt. I know, Chad, you're a big fan of Jake Butt as well. He was a great talent coming out of Michigan, but after 4 knee surgeries, how much could he really produce? How much is he really going to bring to the table? I think it's Elway trying to salvage that draft pick and trying to salvage the Jake Butt, aura and mystique for what it was coming out of college. And if he's given one more shot, whatever he produces, Chad, will be just the cherry on top of the rest of the offensive weaponry this season.
All right, let's grab this question from Kenneth Booker. It's good to have you in the chat stream, by the way, Kenneth, on YouTube. He says, does everyone think John Elway is going to make one more big move? If so, what do you think? Maybe Miles Jack. Now, it's an interesting question, and thank you for the question again, Kenneth, because on, what was it? It was either Thursday or Friday. The days have blurred to me now. Mike Kliss, actually, I think it was Friday. He appeared on Stokely and Zach, if I'm not mistaken, on 104.3 The Fan. And basically what he let slip is that he talked to John Elway. This was before the cuts came Saturday, the 25 additional roster cuts. But this was after the Todd Davis cut and after the Christian Covington for Austin Calitro trade. He said after talking to Elway, he wouldn't be surprised if there was one more wow move. He was talking about trades made by this team between now and the season opener next Monday night. And a lot of fans immediately started pining for the linebacker. What was his name? I just had Miles.
Jack.
Thank you, Miles Jack from Jacksonville. How realistic do you think that is, first and foremost, Kristie? And do you think the Broncos, I mean, he'd be a nice little upgrade for the Broncos, no doubt, but do you think that's a feasible trade for the Broncos to go out and get Miles Jack?
I don't know about feasible, but you never know with Elway. I mean, he could totally shock you and surprise you with what he's going to do next. We don't know. He does whatever he wants to do, basically. I don't know.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't see him making any moves though. I can't see it. I think he's done.
Zach, after his post cuts presser, he made it sound like, and he was kind of true to his word. He was asked, "Hey, you going to be active on the waiver wire? You foresee yourself making any claims?" And he said, "No, not really. We're happy with our team. We're confident with the football team that we have." And kind of true to his word, they only ended up making one waiver claim and ended up re-signing 15 of the players they cut to the practice squad, which we'll go through here tonight. So I actually tend to concur with Kristie on this. I'm not seeing another big deal coming out of left field, even though there's a lot of buzz and rumor building around that as a possibility.
I just think Myles Jack is a lot like Mark Barron, where he's not a traditional inside linebacker. If they're going to pick up a guy who wants to start behind Todd Davis or help replace him, it's got to be a Nigel Bradham type. I think just a more prototypical inside off-ball linebacker. Myles Jack, there's a reason why this guy's available. He never really panned out to what he was in college either, or what he could have been with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm with Kristie. I'm with you, Chad. I don't think they're going to make any more moves. I think Elway is pretty happy with the roster for what it is.
All right, let's grab this super chat from Mike Evans. We really appreciate the support. So
Thank you,
consistent, Mike. Much love to you, my friend, and we appreciate you big time. He says, is the defense stronger or weaker in our ability to stop Derrick Henry now that Todd Davis is gone? And I wish I could tell you that it's stronger. I don't think there's any way you could quantify that the defense is in any way stronger when it comes to stuff in the run without Todd Davis. Now, a lot of times, though, what happens in the NFL is, a star gets cut or gets hurt, and you think, oh, man, it hardly ever happens at quarterback, but you think to yourself, oh, man, the season's over, basically. That whatever area, whatever position that guy plays, it's going to be brutal this year. And then someone emerges, turns out to be a star. I mean, Alexander Johnson is a good example of that last year. There were people that were excited, felt like he had some upside, but there was nobody that expected Alexander Johnson to step on the stage in week 5 and go on the romp that he did as a starter and just put a stranglehold. I mean, he played basically at a Pro Bowl level. So it's all good. As a dog owner, I know how this goes. Worst case scenario, I just want to point something out, gang. Bear with me one sec. Kristie, if you need to, if the dog gets going, doesn't stop, that little button right there,
yeah.
you can mute just in case. But I can't see, Zach and Kristie, how this defense got any stronger when it comes to stuffing Derrick Henry. And I'd be lying to you. Oh, there she went. I don't know where she went. Hopefully she pops back on. But, Zach, I don't know how you could quantify that this defense got any better when it comes to Derrick Henry. That's a real issue for the season opener now.
There's literally no way to spin it that the defense, it got better by losing Todd Davis against the run. I mean, the combined forces, like I said, of Jewell, Johnson, Calitro, Mark Barron, if they just add up to one Todd Davis, that's still 4 guys replacing one. It's going to be a problem. Though I don't think the Broncos' game plan really changed much with or without Todd Davis in the lineup against the Titans. It was always going to be sell out to stop the run and make Ryan Tannehill beat you. And I think the Broncos are still going to do that, loading up the box with 7 or 8 guys, shutting down Derrick Henry and going from there. But losing Davis for sure doesn't help Denver.
David Bingaman jumping in. You guys got to stop nitpicking this stuff.
That's kind of our job.
That's what we do. That's what we're supposed to do. And by the way, for what it's worth, we haven't had a chance to exercise our own demons as the football priest of this show here. So we're getting things off our chest too. Yes, we've had our written stuff that we've been able to kind of get some things out, but being able to talk it out and have a conversation about it, this is our first chance, Zach and I, to really get this out. And by the way, Kristie popped off. Hopefully she comes back on, and when she does, we'll put her back on the screen. Technical difficulty, or maybe the dog, I don't know. But David, great supporter of MHH, very active in the comments. We correspond on email, so I know it's coming from a good place. And just know, we'll eventually here this week, we're going to be moving on to the Tennessee Titans. But for now, we're still reacting to the roster cuts. We're talking about the winners. We're talking about the losers. We're trying to project how these decisions that were made over the weekend are going to affect this team throughout the course of 2020. And then we got Terry Randall jumping in on Super Chat north of the 49th parallel, proving, as always, the Broncos country is not a geographic location. It is a hashtag state of being. Appreciate you, Terry. He says, just love this evening. Hashtag state of being, hashtag Broncos world, hashtag MHH UN. Well, Terry, we're just glad to have you with us, my friend. It's not the same when you're not with us. And come to think of it, I can't even think of the last time Terry has not been in a Huddle Up podcast live stream. So much love to you, my friend. Zach, let's talk about the fact that De'Vante Bausby got cut. And here's where I want to bring this up because, look, John Elway seemed to kind of have a feeling, and I think, Christy, give me a thumbs up if we're good. I can bring you back on. Okay. We're good. She's back in the house. Here we go. She's back in the house. Okay. No worries. De'Vante Bausby. So it's interesting, and keep Mr. Boggins super up there, John. Let me just get this off my chest real quick. Because when the De'Vante Bausby cut was made, I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, I get it that Hassan Bossy, he's got some juice to him, but he's an undrafted rookie. Devontae Harris, at the beginning of camp, there's no way I would have predicted that he would have beat out De'Vante Bausby for a roster spot. And then, of course, we knew Michael Ojemudia was making this thing. He was the third-round pick. Even though he spent probably half a training camp banged up with that quad, of course he's going to make it because of that draft pedigree. But then, Zach, after the cuts come, and Christy, John Elway sits up there in his post-cut presser, and he seems very confident about kind of what they're going to do with the waiver wire. Like, he kind of had a feeling. He knew that teams were going to be quite conservative when it comes to utilizing the wire because there's no preseason film. Everyone's going off of basically the last thing they saw from players. And when it comes to De'Vante Bausby, it was week 5, 2019, when he got that neck against the LA Chargers. So he's kind of a out of sight, out of mind, I would guess, for most NFL teams. And so Elway, maybe playing a little 4D chess, if you will, felt, hey, I like our odds that I can sneak him onto the practice squad. Zach, that's exactly how it shook out. Drop some knowledge, and then we'll get Christie's take.
You know what? They are very fortunate to get Bausby back on the practice squad because he's a starting caliber cornerback, at least in Denver. But I just don't like, and what can't be unerased and what you can't put the cork back in the wine bottle, they have already intimated, Denver, that they think Devontae Harris and Michael O are better cornerbacks than De'Vante Bausby. That is the overall message Elway has sent the entire offseason. Remember when he didn't tender him, then he resigned him for a few bucks cheaper, then he waited until the doorstep of the season to cut him from the active roster and hopefully get him back to the practice squad. Maybe, Chad, you and I are just bigger Bausby fans than the front offices. I happen to think he's a really good cornerback in Vic Fangio's system. Tall, lanky, athletic, just a natural playmaker. I don't think Devontae Harris is better than him. And I don't think Michael O right now is better than De'Vante Bausby either. They don't have enough experience in that secondary, and you're going to cut one of the lone guys from last year who actually helped and contributed to this Broncos defense. I don't like the move. Hopefully it's just temporary and he's elevated to the active roster in the coming weeks, but it's still the message that's sent is that the Broncos are not high on Bausby at all.
It was really surprising, Christy. What was your take on Bausby not only getting cut, but then, of course, getting re-signed to the practice squad?
Him getting cut was it was shocking. He got so much play during training camp, and everybody was so high on him the whole time. But at the same time, I kind of get where they're coming from with that. Fangio's looking for versatility. And I think he just didn't have it. He's mainly a one-trick pony. He does something good, and that's all he does. I like him as a player, and I think they can use him, but I think the practice squad for him right now is he's there for a reason.
The one thing I'll say about Bausby, and then we're going to grab Boggins Super here. And thank you for the Super Chats, gang. We appreciate it. Is that, as Zach said, we saw him debut basically as a Bronco in week 3, and that was against Green Bay. Broncos had, of course, the injury to Bryce Callahan, and he came in, stepped in when they finally got sick of seeing Isaac Yiadom get burned left and right and get penalized. They bring in Bausby. He plays very well against Green Bay. Of course, it was a losing effort by the Broncos, but the next week plays well again against Jacksonville. And then, of course, the injury in week 5. I think he's a quintessential Fangio boundary corner. Now, to Christie's point, you might be onto something in that he is a boundary guy. Like, he's not a guy that can kick inside and play the slot. In that sense, you can say he's a one-trick pony. But I was panning Elway. But then after the fact, I got to give him his props. I got to give him his credit. He rolled the dice, and it did not, at least up to this point, come back to bite him. And by the way, Mr. Boggins Super Chat, thanks, my friend. And he's coming on the show, by the way, Wednesday night. We're going to have Boggins on in the 14th, I believe, Superstar segment. Looking forward to talking to you, my friend. He says, Josie Jewell is a poor man's Todd Davis. I'm pretty sure you meant to say poor man's Todd Davis. And then he says, hey, Queen, who's your prediction for that starting cornerback number 3 spot next Monday? So, Kristie, we know it's not going to be De'Vante Bausby. If you had to put some money on who's that number 3, who's it going to be?
It's the. I don't know. I'd probably say Callahan.
So Callahan is going to play this slot. I think the next. So in base defense, Zach, we're going to have Bouye and Callahan, and then when that third one comes on the field, Harris. I'm putting my money on Harris. Yeah. I mean, why is it Harris though to you?
It's what the Fangio and what Elway think is that he's a better fit for this defense than Bausby, or else Bausby would have been cut on the practice squad right now. I don't think Michael O is there just yet. I don't think they want to put too much on his plate. At least I hope not. But for the third cornerback, it's just a matter of by default now. You cut one of your best guys in that secondary, and the next best guy, quote unquote, is De'Vante Harris. So that's who I think will be the third cornerback.
Okay, John. Let's grab Ariel Guerin. Jumping in on Super Chat. Really appreciate you and Jay, by the way. Thank you both. Appreciate the support. It means a lot to us. Ariel says, Jay and Ariel here again. Jay wants to know, since the Broncos cut Bausby, who will be the nickel corner? Also, who will replace Todd Davis? So we're thinking, yeah, it's going to take a village perhaps by the time the season's over with. But it looks like the biggest beneficiary of the Bausby cut is going to be, in the short term anyway, De'Vante Harris, although they played Asang Basi in the nickel last week with the ones. And, honestly, I was so flabbergasted that it was that Bausby got cut. And after seeing some of the other maneuverings that the team did, trying different guys at different places, Isaac Yiadom getting traded, I honestly don't know. Maybe it's going to be Michael Ojemudia, who's that next corner to take the field. I don't know. But he's been so injured this summer that I can't imagine that he's quite ready for prime time quite yet. I mean, this is a game, not only is it the season opener, you want to get out on the right foot, but this is a team, the Tennessee Titans, that you could be having tiebreaker issues for the wild card. It's a conference match. So you gotta come to win. So I'm guessing it's going to be Harris, but at linebacker, obviously it's going to be Josie Jewell. Undoubtedly is the immediate beneficiary, going to start next to Alexander Johnson.
Man, I'd rather play Bassey over Michael Ojemudia, Chad. I just think he looked better, and I think the Broncos gave him the first team reps for a reason over Ojemudia. If they have to rely on a rookie in a primetime game against an offense that can be explosive, I mean, Tennessee is not just Derrick Henry. They have some weapons there, including Jonnu Smith, including Brown, the receiver. If they take that passing game lightly and try to trot out Michael Ojemudia, they're going to be in trouble on Monday night.
Let's grab this from Kenneth Booker real quick. He says, and this is a topic I wanted to get both of your takes on here. One or two more questions, and then we'll let Kristie go for tonight. How did DeMarcus Walker make this team? That was the biggest surprise to me. It was a surprise. This was something that, Kristie, as you probably saw last week, Zach and I had basically come to terms with probably DeMarcus Walker's not making this roster. And then Christian Covington gets dealt, and we're like, whoop, he's making the roster. And sure enough, he makes the roster. And by the way, Deshaun Williams, who got cut Saturday, got re-signed to the practice squad. So DeMarcus Walker, how surprised were you, or were you surprised that he ended up making the cut in his contract year as a former second-round pick?
I think a lot of people were surprised. I know a lot of people like him a lot. I don't know. I'm like on the fence with him. He's there. I'm not really a big fan. A lot of people like him, though. Popular
sentiment.
This is true. Zach, what was your take on, obviously, Walker, one of the winners of the weekend, because he was kind of a dark horse that a lot of people had written off at this point.
Yeah, of course, when I put him on my 53, when I leave him off my 53, he's put on the 53. I'm happy about it. He's a former second-round pick, and I think the Broncos are just giving him one more chance. Similar to Jake Butt, same draft class, giving a high-round pick one more shot in a Fangio defense to succeed. And you know what? Like we always talk about, every time Walker's on the field, he's always around the football. You can't teach that nose for the ball, Chad, and DeMarcus Walker has it. You put him in this defense with everybody else, I think he's going to finally give the Broncos the return on investment they've been seeking. I think he's going to have a breakout season this year, if only because it's a contract year for DeMarcus Walker.
Let's grab this super chat from Chris Hernandez, who, as you can see in his YouTube profile pic, rocking Zachary Smouse's Mile High Huddle Let 'Em Hate t-shirt and the mug. We just shared one of his selfies on MHH Instagram, and it's a good one. I suggest you guys check it out. But much love to you, my friend. You know we appreciate your generosity and your support. He says, great to see Kristie again. # click those little thumbs up for her.
That's right.
Amen, gang. Don't forget to hit the like button. And then, John, grab Big Kevin one more time, because we're running out of time here with if you still have him, I can do it reverse engineered if we need to. But we're running out of time. Glenn Hauser, by the way, jumping in.
Thank you,
KR,
Glenn.
do you all think Vic and Elway are in total agreement on the defensive moves? Coach seemed prickly answering questions on why. # fine that Todd's gone. So Glenn's okay that Todd's gone. This is one of those, well, I'll let you answer. Kristie, do you think that was an Elway move or a Vic move, the cutting of Todd Davis?
I'd say it's a Vic move, to be honest. The reason I say that, I mean, Elway, he keeps people around as long as he can. He tends to. He keeps them around as long as he can. And I think Vic wasn't too high up on him in the first place. So, I mean, I don't see them totally disagreeing, but there was definitely probably some type of disagreement there.
What do you think, Zach?
I tend to agree with that. I don't think, I think they're in lockstep for the most part, but Fangio understands that Elway has final say. Fangio understands that Elway is the boss. He is the Duke. He has all control over the roster. So if Fangio wants a guy, he's still subject to Elway's approval. I think, though, this is why this regime works so well. Elway respects Vic Fangio as a coach. Elway did not respect Vance Joseph, and I think they have a good working relationship, but Fangio understands he's definitely second fiddle behind Elway, and you can even argue Matt Russell.
This is how, and by the way, Glenn, thank you for your support, my friend. Really appreciate it. We're going to grab Big Kev here next, but this is how I could foresee, I'll differ with you two a little bit on this topic. This is how I could see it having happened in my mind's eye. Elway comes to Vic and says, hey, when Todd goes down with that calf, says, hey, man, let's see what these other guys do. I mean, we can't keep dealing with these injuries. We could save some money on the cap. Let's see if we can kind of figure out some other options, see how the other guys look, kind of prepare for life without Todd, and then, make a decision at the doorstep of the season. Vic's like, okay. And Josie Jewell, I think he impressed Vic in that ensuing 2.5, 3 weeks. Then Mark Barron, I think, he comes in, he's got the experience that coaches crave and love, and I think they were happy with that. So he said, I think we can live with it. And Elway pulled the trigger. That's how I could kind of see it happen. Not necessarily that Fangio was the driving force, but that he was kind of on the same page with regard to the Todd Davis cut. Big Kev jumping in. Appreciate you, my friend. He says, hey, KR, why did Vic say he's not comfortable last week with A.J. Johnson making the calls at linebacker, and now Davis is gone? Is he changing his tune? And this is something, by the way, a lot of fans have gotten confused about. A lot of fans, because of some of the things that have been said in the media, both by coaches and players, that maybe Josie Jewell is going to be the guy with the green dot on his helmet, getting the signals in from Fangio and making the calls. So, Kristie, what's your take for Kevin here in that he said AJ, he wasn't quite comfortable? I wouldn't say – he didn't say he wasn't comfortable. He said he's not 100% ready, or he doesn't have a 100% down. He used the number 100%. But what was your take for Kevin there, Kristie? And she's gone. All right. Zach, your take.
You know what? It could lead to, I think, the theory that it came from up above and Vic Fangio did not sign off on the Davis release. It's just Vic Fangio is a ball coach, and Elway thinks differently as a general manager. He's up top. He's sitting on his ivory tower in his perch. Fangio's on the field, and you're taking away from a defensive NFL lifer, a defensive-oriented coach, his best tackler. He's not going to be happy about that because he probably knew well in advance before Saturday that they were going to cut Todd Davis. He probably wasn't in the future plans. Davis was when he suffered that injury. And ever since then, Vic probably knew the writing was on the wall and he was going to lose his leading guy in the middle. He can't be happy about that as a ball coach. But I think he resigned himself to it because, like I mentioned, he knows he can kick and scream, he can complain, he can curse. It's still Elway's final call.
Yeah. I mean, I think Alexander Johnson is going to – he's the only 3-down linebacker. So whoever's going to have that dot on their helmet, it's your linebacker that is going to be on the field for the most snaps. Now, when we say 3-down linebacker, I think you're going to see AJ leave the field quite often in certain passing situations, but I can't imagine that it won't be Alexander Johnson with the dot. That doesn't mean Josie Jewell won't help with the calls, because I think he's a little bit more comfortable and confident doing that just with his own skill set. But it's going to be Johnson just because he's going to be that tip of the spear. And speaking of, we also got to bring this up from Todd Anderson. So we were surprised, of course, that also Justin Hollins kind of got a raw deal this summer from the Broncos. 2 years in a row, he's asked to switch positions, go from edge to off ball. And he didn't look pretty last year. And we told you guys it wasn't going to look pretty again this year. It's just not his bag. He can maybe hang a little bit in coverage because of that length and his athleticism. He's an explosive athlete, but he belongs on the edge, Zach.
Yes.
And ultimately, because they felt strong in their numbers at edge, but not at off ball, they ended up making him a casualty here. And the news, though, is he did get claimed off waivers from his former position coach, Brandon Staley, who's now the defensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Rams. So Hollins lands on his feet. He says no hard feelings for the Broncos, but it's a 5th-round pick, not even 2 years removed quite yet, that is now in the wind.
He wouldn't be saying no hard feelings if he didn't get claimed by the Rams, Chad. I mean, he definitely did get a raw deal, and he went to DeMarcus Walker's School of Player Development, where he was a high upside 5th-round pick. They put too much on his plate, overloading him with 2 positions, and they cut him a year later with no offseason practices and no preseason film. How do you do that? He was an off-ball, an outside linebacker, not an off-ball guy. He, like you said, long arms, very athletic, very explosive. He reminded me a lot of Deion Jordan, another Oregon guy as well. And you can't coach that raw physical talent. He was a specimen. They don't really have, Jerry Atachu, Malik Reed, those are nice players to have, but they don't have an all-star backup behind Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, a high upside guy. I'm not saying Hollins could have been that, but to cut him, give up on him after only 1 year, when you play him at a spot he's not familiar with, of course he's not going to look good. Of course he's going to be swimming out there. He's playing 2 positions, similar to DeMarcus Walker in 2017. Obviously, again, this is Elway's call, and Vic Fangio probably had to sign off on it. I don't think he's happy about losing a guy. He always wants flexibility and versatility. He lost a guy who can play both linebacker spots, or theoretically could help out at both linebacker spots. I think it's a little knee-jerk, Chet, to give up on Hollins after only 1 year.
I think, going back to the whole winners and losers thing, though, it kind of speaks to how the Broncos feel about Malik Reed. And Malik Reed has had a really strong camp. And look, he was the Asang Basi of 2019. He was the undrafted rookie that came out of nowhere, makes the roster, really helped kind of bridge the gap in the initial weeks when Bradley Chubb was lost with that ACL, played quite a bit. Then he hit the rookie wall, and basically the last quarter of the season, he was a non-factor, and it was Jeremiah Atachu who was signed about mid-season to come in and ended up really being a life-saving complement to Von Miller down the stretch. So it's a credit to, I think, Malik Reed. They feel good about him. They feel good about Jerry Atachu as kind of that veteran rotational guy that can stop the gap, so to speak. So it's unfortunate. Got to cut him loose. But, Justin Hollins, happy trails to you. By the way, the chat stream jumped in, but we are not going to let any of our Super Chat superstars out in the cold. Jess, CO13 Sports, appreciate the super, my friend. And he says, develop Bellamy and Tuska. Let's go. And that is, Zach, a good segue to, let me pull this up real quick and let's go through the practice squad. The Denver Broncos, I'll tell you, in case you guys missed it earlier, they have now signed 16 players to the practice squad. Here's who made the cut. Quinn Bailey, offensive tackle. De'Vante Bausby, as we've already mentioned. Levante Bellamy, the undrafted rookie running back. Trinity Benson was kept around. Fred Brown as well. Jeremy Cox, the running back. Elijah Holder, the safety. PJ Locke, the safety. Patrick Morris, inside offensive lineman, of course, center/guard. Offensive tackle, Darren Paolo. Offensive tackle, Jake Rogers. And then the quarterback, Brett Rippon. Derek Tuska, the 7th-round pick this year, who was criticized somewhat by Vic Fangio last week for lacking some strength and lacking in quite a few areas, but they like him as a player and they want to develop him. He's kept around. Josh Watson, the off-ball linebacker, undrafted rookie from last year. And then Deshaun Williams. And then one last kid that was brought in, this is the one waiver claim the Broncos made. It's not listed here, but it is Kevin Tolliver, who was claimed off waivers from Chicago. So kind of an old Fangio tie there. But Zach, if there are any takeaways to you from how this practice squad got formulated and kind of shook out, what would it be?
The takeaway is the Broncos brought back who they're familiar with. They're not going to gamble on outside players with no preseason film or offseason film, and most of these guys have some developmental talent. One thing that jumps out to me is Deshaun Williams. Someone in the coaching staff, maybe it's Elway, maybe it's Russell, maybe it's Bill Kollar, they like Deshaun Williams. He's been with Denver now 2 coaching staffs, going back to Vance Joseph. So as a defensive line prospect, can never have too many. Look how Shelby Harris kind of came out of nowhere. I like how there's offensive linemen on the practice squad. There's cornerbacks on the practice squad. I think Tolliver is a guy, along with Bausby, who can eventually get to the active roster because the Broncos are so perilously thin in the secondary.
JP jumping in, longtime listener of the show, fellow drummer like yours truly. Thanks for the support, my friend, and it's always good to have you back in the chat. And he says, I don't like Davis being cut. Hopefully this means next year we're drafting Dylan Moses from Bama or someone through a trade like CJ Mosley or better. In case you guys missed it, Eric Trickle had a really good article that he published yesterday evening going through a few potential targets, trade targets if the Broncos. This is kind of riffing off this article, riffing off of what Kliss said the day prior, that he thinks there's one more wow trade coming down the pike for the Denver Broncos. And so Eric listed a few options out there. And, CJ Mosley is a guy that, of course, he opted out for 2020. He's not even in the mix this year. I don't know what that does for, trade value wise, no one's going to trade for a linebacker that can't step in and play this year. So, and that deadline's long gone. So anyone who opted out, there's no coming back this year. But I could see it. There's a potential. Miles Jack, as we mentioned earlier in the show, is another name that a lot of fans are pining for. Cody Potter here jumping in also on Super Chat. Appreciate you, Cody. Says, I heard from Kliss yesterday there was a big trade in the winds for the Broncos. Any idea on who? #Go Broncos. Zach, in first of all, what's your take on the idea of the Broncos going out and trading for another linebacker? There's just so many musical chairs at that position. My feeling on it is if they were going to make a trade, if Kliss were right, it seems like be at a different position at this point because they've now added 2 new faces in Barron and Calitro.
Don't forget, though, anyone they bring aboard has to go through CV testing, has to learn the playbook, has to get acquainted with the team. He wouldn't probably contribute week 1 anyway. Can I just raise the issue, though? You start to wonder now, top of my head, I don't know who was on the board, but KJ Hamler in the second round, considering how the Broncos inside linebacker position turned out, you wonder again whether the Broncos made the right choice ultimately in double dipping at wide receiver and not utilizing that second round pick elsewhere. I don't know who's out there. Miles Jack doesn't do it for me. CJ Mosley, like you said, is not a possibility. Most, like I said, good inside linebackers are hard to find. They're up there with cornerbacks and tackles and quarterbacks. They're really a rare position in the NFL to be elite at that spot. No one really out there, Chad, that I would pull the trigger on to give up not only a contract to, but compensation for.
That's the thing to keep in mind is you not only have the compensation, so a draft pick or another player or draft picks, but you got to pay the guy. You got to either cover what his current contract is, or in a lot of cases, if they're disgruntled and you want to get him here with a fresh start and excited and happy to be there, you got to give him an extension. Here's a few names that Eric floated that, he's heard some things. There's some buzz. There's some rumors around each guy. Eric Kendricks from Minnesota, a versatile linebacker, got quite a few years left on his contract, but they're all big dollars on that contract. KJ Wright of Seattle, a guy that solid against the run. Eric says Seattle has younger linebackers that are wanting to get out on the field more. Of course, it'd be easier to do that if Wright is out of the way. Just a thought. Sean Lee, someone that you've covered the last little bit. Zach Tyler Matekovich from Buffalo. Jermaine Pratt. Now, Jermaine Pratt is interesting to me because he was the guy we liked in the draft.
Yes.
Here's what he says, Eric, about Pratt. Pratt is only entering his second year, but there has been an overhaul of the Bengals staff. Additionally, the team spent 3 higher value draft picks in the past draft, pushing Pratt out potentially. Now, he's that NC State kid that we liked in the 2019 draft, so he's interesting. Fred Warner, which I just don't see San Francisco parting with him. Matt Milano from Buffalo, Quan Alexander also from San Francisco, and then the 3 Jacksonville linebackers from Miles Jack He also mentions here Joe Schobert, who was just signed in this past offseason, of course, as a free agent, and then Leon Jacobs. So if any of those names jump out, I don't see linebacker, to be honest with you, happening. But if any of those names jump out, what do you think?
Well, revisionist history, Chad. You and I were pounding the table for the Broncos to sign either Schobert or Corey Littleton this offseason. And looking back on it, it would have been the proper move, allocating funds there. You don't want Sean Lee, first of all, he's going on IR with a sports hernia, and he's literally broken down every single season. Jermaine Pratt is a guy, he has upside. He's not too expensive. Like you said, we liked him in the draft, Chad. He's a multifaceted linebacker. That's one potential trade I can see because there's upside for this defense. You're not acquiring a former busted Mark Barron or some 35-year-old Corey Nelson who's just plugging a hole for a year. You got to have a guy you can build around. KJ Wright is interesting. I don't know his contract, but like Eric said, he's a great coverage linebacker, one of the best, I think, of this last decade. I don't know how expensive he is. He's up there in age as well. Long story short, Jermaine Pratt from that list is the only guy I'm willing to give up a draft pick for.
He intrigues me. I mean, he still intrigues me, does Jermaine Pratt. So, the Broncos, and it was under the Vic Fangio regime, they had a chance to sign him or draft him, and decided not to. Now, I'm trying to figure out whose name this is on Facebook. You got to give StreamYard permission to show your name if you're on Facebook, but whoever you are, our thoughts are out to you. He says, I got evacuated from my childhood home due to a massive wildfire. Oh. Man, I needed the pod today. Football Priest, hashtag state of being from Montana. So thoughts and prayers to you, my friend, and the people of Montana. That's just terrible, brother. So best wishes to you. All right, let me see here. Jeff C. jumping in. And I don't know, Kristie must have had a technical issue again, and I don't know what happened. Of course, we'll get her on down the road again, but something happened. She just snapped out of the frame. So I hope everything's all right. But Jeff says, and thank you for the super, by the way, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Queen in the house. Guys, I'm scratching my head on why Royce Freeman is still on the team. This guy just gravitates toward defensive walls. Hashtag Denver Broncos for life. I mean, I'm not scratching my head. In fact, he's one of those guys that I think back when the Melvin Gordon signing was made, Zach, we said about Royce Freeman, and it was a similar thing with Lindsey, although we kind of knew what the answer was going to be, but we were curious to see what kind of an effect the Melvin Gordon addition would have on Royce Freeman. Would it be, I'm going to take my ball and go home, curl up and die, oh, poor me, or would he take it as a shot across the bow and kind of galvanize him? And to his credit, Zach, I think it was the latter. I think he's one of those guys that had been written off. He had a really strong training camp, and it was a very unique training camp, no preseason. So, and very closed off to scrutiny from us. But he had a good training camp. I'm not surprised he made this roster one year.
No, yeah. Maybe if there was a preseason, De'Vante Bausby would have made it, Chad, as an undrafted guy. I think he offers more upside and more future ability for Denver. But Freeman, he's a former third-round pick, and before Lindsey exploded onto the scene, he was a good starter for the Broncos. He's not an explosive guy by any means, but I think he's a little more explosive, in other words, of a version of C.J. Anderson, or a poor man's version of C.J. Anderson. And if he's your third running back in a system that has Lindsey and Melvin Gordon and an offense that has Sutton, Judy, Hamler, and the rest, I mean, that's a good guy to have. And he's motivated. You have the draft status. You are trying to milk that, similar to why the Broncos kept Jake Butt around. I don't know. I'm not surprised at all, Chad. I actually expected Freeman to make the roster in a wonky offseason.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised. And by the way, Terry Randall jumping back in on Super Chat. Appreciate you, my brother. Means a lot. You know that. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Butt gets an extension at some point. If he stays healthy and, he's going to have to be exposed to some snaps. They're going to have to see how he holds up to contact over time. But again, we can question it, but the Broncos love Jake Butt. They do. They like Jake Butt. He was their original plan for the long-term tight end. When he got hurt, they had to make other plans. They had to hedge. And of course, Noah Fant became plan A now. But I still think Jake Butt, in a perfect world for John Elway, when he's on his whiteboard, drawing up, rosters and looking ahead and projecting forward, he wants Jake Butt to work out. And maybe even just for the sake of pride of being able to say, look, I drafted him injured because I knew what kind of player he was. And come hell or high water, we're going to see that player in the orange and blue. But you're going to have to expose Jake Butt to some snaps in order to feel even semi-confident offering him an extension, Zach. And I just don't see where the snap's going to come from. we know when it comes to Pat Shurmur, he doesn't utilize a lot of 2 tight end sets. He uses the tight end a lot in the offense, but just not a lot of 2 tight end sets. So unless you're going to be taking Noah Fant off the field, or unless Pat Shurmur has some kind of a philosophical change of heart and starts utilizing more 2 tight end sets, I have a hard time imagining just where Jake Butt would get those type of snaps in theory.
For him to land a contract extension, he would not only have to get on the field, but make plays on the field. Him just surviving, Chad, isn't good enough to warrant millions of dollars. It's a great feel-good story. He came back from 4 knee surgeries. He went through every practice and what was a limited, truncated training camp. It's a good story, but this is the NFL. This is where business cuts it, production over anything else. And I don't want the Broncos to get a first-round tight end off the field in place of a 5th-round guy coming off 4 knee surgeries. I mean, whatever he can bring to the table is great. I'm happy he made the team. I'm happy for him. But I would rather look for Elway to increase his trade value and then flip him for a draft pick. You don't need so many tight ends on the roster when you already have 2 younger guys, you can argue, in Beck and Alberto, who have way more upside than Jake Butt, again, after 4 knee operations.
Gary Smith's point here, sometimes when you don't give up on someone, it pays off. We'll see crossed fingers. And I agree that my fingers are crossed too. I'm having a hard time seeing where Jake Butt's going to get any swings at the plate, so to speak. By the way, Steve Baumgartner jumping in, longtime listener of the show.
Thank you, Steven.
MHH Mount Rushmore member. You guys have met him. We had him on the show a month and a half or so back. Appreciate your support as always, Steve. And he says 8 more days until we play. In fact, when you guys wake up tomorrow, it'll be Labor Day and it'll officially be game week. Tomorrow begins week 1, the preparation week, ahead of the Monday Night Football doubleheader over the last game of the week again. So we're all having to wait that much longer. But yeah, Zach, it's finally here.
It's wild. It seemed like when it was March and everything was shutting down and came to a crawl, it seemed like it was going to be eons until we got to September. And then something happened from August 1st when training camp kind of got underway. Now it's September 6th and the season is 1 week away. It's great. We all need this. We all miss football. We all miss sports. It's going to be a semblance of normalcy in what's been an awful year so far. I just can't believe, Chad, 1 week away. Broncos regular season football. It's awesome.
Shout out to Jay Ritchie jumping in with the super chat. Appreciate you, my friend. New name that I don't. Oh, it's that Jay. Okay, cool. He says, hey guys, Jay and Ariel here again. Watching you guys from the Pittsburgh area. Love watching. Question. What are your thoughts on the 3rd wide receiver? Will Hamler surpass Patrick? Great question. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate you and Ariel. I hope it's Ariel or is it Ariel? I'm curious. Just tell me, is it Little Mermaid pronunciation, Ariel, or is it Ariel? I'm just curious. What's your answer for him here, Zach?
First of all, Hamler's coming off an injury. He might, I guess he's not for right now going on short-term IR. He's going to be worked in slowly. I think that injury kind of caused some pause in the Broncos coaching staff. Patrick is reliable. I don't know why he catches so much flack from the Broncos fan base. He is Cortland Sutton light, and he has great chemistry with your quarterback in Drew Lock. So I think for the time being, the 3rd receiver is going to be Tim Patrick, but it's hard to classify because Hamler's mostly an inside guy and Tim Patrick is an outside guy. You're going to see a lot of the Broncos receivers, Jerry Jeudy included, kind of move around the formation. Overall, though, depth chart-wise, it has to be Patrick because he's the veteran. He has skin in the game, and he's just more reliable at this point in their respective careers than KJ Hamler.
KJ still just, as you said, he's just still a ways out from being fully healthy, and I'm a little bit concerned that he's going to ever get completely healthy in this calendar season. Now, I hope I'm wrong. Let me just read to you what Elway said about him on Saturday night. Quote, KJ is going to stay on the active roster. He's getting close. Hopefully he starts running around this week. We'll take him day to day. He's going to stay on the 53. He'll stay there. And so, close quote. So he's obviously not going to be put on any short-term injury list, or he's staying on the roster. I'm not expecting to see much from him unless he all of a sudden is really active in practice this week, which is possible. We'll see. Unless that happens, though, I'm expecting him kind of circle back week 2, but it's going to be Patrick in the short term because that's a player that they can count on. You're going to see Sutton, Jeudy, Patrick, a lot of those 3 wide sets, and a little Deshaun Hamilton as well. And Zach, by the time, maybe put it this way, by the time fans can walk through the gate at Empower Field at Mile High, which is going to be week 3, we learned right before we went live tonight, the Denver Broncos got the green light from the state of Colorado. fans at a limited capacity, we don't know exactly quite yet what the number is going to be, are going to be allowed for the Tampa Bay Bucks game when Tom Brady and Gronk and that whole crew, Bruce Arians, when they come to town, some fans are going to be there. The expectation, Zach, is it's going to be somewhere between 20 to 25,000 fans in the stands. Of course, it's going to have to be, some kind of social distance scenario and whatnot, but the Broncos did get that green light. So, hey, it looks like there will be fans in the stands at Mile High, and that's exciting.
In terms of Hamler, though, I mean, with hamstrings especially, for a speed demon receiver, there's not too many injuries that are worse to deal with. They are nagging ailments. They're so easily re-aggravated. So I think the Broncos are handling them with kid gloves. Let's say you sacrifice 2-3 weeks, but you preserve 13 other weeks, as opposed to exposing him to games and impact plays, and he re-aggravates that injury and he's out for the rest of the season. We've been saying this, or at least I've been since he's been drafted, KJ Hamler. He is not going to be this 1,000-yard guy, wide receiver one right out of the gate. It's not in an offense that has Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. Down the road in 2021 and beyond, he can be that Deshaun Jackson or maybe even Tyreek Hill light. But for now, he's going to be a situational player or maybe even a decoy when or if he's on the field.
He's just got to get healthy. He's just got to get healthy first. And Jamal Killing's jumping in, one of the coolest names on our super chat of all time.
Thank you, Jamal.
That Darius Kilgo, Jamal Killings, these are names that you probably were a formidable football player yourself. Appreciate the support, my friend. And it's always good to have you in the chat stream. And, of course, we'll be tagging you like we do all of our superstars on Twitter after the show. Appreciate you, my friend. Zach, we got JP. We're getting a little long, but we've been just sitting on our thumbs, chomping at the bit to talk to you guys with everything that's gone down. And there's a lot of topics we haven't even got to yet tonight. So we're going to hang for a little bit longer here. JP jumping back in. Appreciate you, Thank you. Friend. He says, I think taking an inside linebacker in the draft last year instead of a tight end in the first round would atone for cutting Todd Davis. I think Noah Fant would have been there in the later rounds. I don't know about the later rounds. Best case scenario, round 2, but I don't think he would have. I think he would have gone. He would have gone probably about where he ended up going to Denver, not much farther beyond that. He was viewed by most people when we were at the Combine, Zach. Everyone we talked to, whether it was media or team, everyone we talked to viewed Noah Fant. They're not going to go out on public record and say it, but when we were talking to people behind cameras and whatnot, Noah Fant was widely viewed as the number one tight end in the class. Yep. And then there was a few people that had, I was one of them that was all about TJ Hawkinson. So, but your point is not missed though, JP, that the Broncos, you have to wonder what the Broncos, passed on to take Noah Fant from a linebacker perspective. They had their shot anyway at Devin Bush, and there were a few other options in that class, but it ended up being Noah Fant. This is the year, though. Noah Fant can make fans completely forget about that. If he has a big second year, makes that kind of year 2 jump that Cortland Sutton did, fans aren't going to be worried and wondering about what could have been in round 1.
I don't regret that trade because it also netted the Broncos Locke and Reisner. So I'm happy with that overall. They can spare an inside linebacker. I think this was the year, Chad, like to piggyback on your point, this was the year, this draft, to shore up the position when you have an unknowns, and A.J. Johnson's still unproven. He had a really good year last year, but he's not Patrick Willis in his prime just yet. He cannot be relied upon as such. Who do you have behind him? You had to sign Mark Barron. So maybe in the second round, instead of taking KJ Hamler, maybe in the third round, instead of taking a tight end, you could have taken an inside linebacker. This was the year. But last year, they got a great tight end 1 prospect in Noah Fant, quarterback of the future in Drew Lock, and your left guard, perennial all-pro in Dalton Reisner. I'm not hating on that, Chad, for someone like Devin Bush.
Yeah, I agree. Black Knight jumping in with the question, if the big trade rumor does happen, what position do you think we would go after? Offensive tackle, linebacker? We've kind of touched on it a little bit already, Black Knight, but I just don't, with all the maneuverings they've made at linebacker, I think they're going to kind of stand pat with the moves they've made unless just some deal comes their way that's too good to say no to. If they were to make a trade, I would probably have those 2 options. I'd probably say offensive tackle, although it's another position that they've made some maneuverings in, not only DeMar Dotson, but you had Calvin Anderson, another one of the winners. Talking about winners and losers of this roster cutdown, Calvin Anderson, tip your cap to him because he was a guy that honestly we viewed as just one of those long-term developmental offensive tackle guys. I didn't expect him when training camp started. I did not expect him to beat out a Jake Rogers for the roster, and he did. So they've got two new faces there. I'd still probably have those two options, though, Zach. If another trade were to occur, I'd have to put my chips probably down on tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I would like it, but, obviously for whatever reason, the Broncos are high on Elijah Wilkinson. They did sign DeMar Dotson. They have some younger players who they carried on to the 53. I don't see a move at either spot. Maybe, though, for someone like safety, Chad, they never really replaced Will Parks. Trey Marshall's an okay guy to have, but you don't really have any impact players there. Don't give me Mark Barron either. He's more of a linebacker than he is a safety. I don't see the Broncos truthfully making any other move, Chad. I think they're genuinely done until the season starts.
Kliss said it, so we have to seriously consider it as a possibility. But I tend to concur, especially I might not have quite felt the same way before I heard Elway talk, but after hearing Elway talk and then seeing kind of the veracity of what he said come through today with how they made their formulated their practice squad, only making one waiver claim. He sounds confident in what they have, and I think they're going to mostly stand pat and see how it looks week one. Chris Hernandez jumping back in. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you, Chris.
It bugs me that the Broncos don't take care of their homegrown players. I don't think that's a good rep to have or a good way to build a team. And Zach, this is a point, of course, you brought up earlier tonight. You brought it up and I thought articulated it well in your gut reaction to Todd Davis. And it's something, honestly, we've been questioning on this podcast, dating all the way back to the Matt Paradis situation. What message are you sending when you don't take care? It's, you don't have to re-sign every draft pick whose rookie contract expired. That's not what we're saying.
One.
Justin Simmons is the next closest person you could say to a drafted player, homegrown guy that got a second contract, the last one too. And technically, I guess you could view it as a second contract because it's a franchise tag, but it's not a multi-year deal, so it's hard to qualify it as a new contract. Todd Davis was a homegrown guy. The Broncos, he spent off and on a summer with New Orleans before the Broncos claimed him off waivers as a rookie out of Sacramento State back in 2014. It was this team. It was Reggie Herring, the linebackers coach, who developed Todd Davis, the Broncos' own TLC. And I'll credit Elway for this. To his credit, Davis was a guy who did get a second contract after his initial rookie deal expired. He became a restricted free agent, played on that deal, and then he became a free agent. The Broncos brought him back, 3 years, $15 million, something like that. And then it's in year 3 that they cut him loose. But it still speaks to that same issue. It kind of tugs and, a wound, that same wound from Justin Simmons, where it's like, look, dude, why are you not? You got to pay the players who outkick their coverage. And yes. Justin Simmons is one of them, especially when, NFL teams act, they don't move until there's a deadline, a contract expires, whatever. Well, that in both cases, the contract expired and there was a deadline. There was nothing. It's another reason why we were upset that Melvin Gordon got that money instead of Phillip Lindsay, because these are the guys that you got to give that set. So are we to just expect that Cortland Sutton, when he becomes a free agent, he's not going to get
right.
re-signed?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, I get what you're saying, Chris, and it's something we've echoed on this show many, many times, and it's concerning.
And don't give me you can't sign someone in a pandemic, because the Chiefs have proven that wrong, and the Chargers just proved that wrong by giving Keenan Allen, $80 million for over 4 years, making him among the highest paid guys. If the Broncos wanted to sign Simmons, they would have gotten it done. And you know what? Cutting Todd Davis and not keeping him around and cutting him for a cost-cutting move, that would be okay in one offseason, but in the same offseason when you don't pay Phillip Lindsay, you don't lock down Justin Simmons, and instead you sign rival players like Melvin Gordon and making him the 6th or 7th highest paid running back in the NFL, it's just, again, like I said in my article, it sends the wrong message that if we draft you and you play well, we're not going to pay you. If you play well regardless, we're not going to give you a second contract. Von Miller was the last notable guy to get a second contract. That was 2016, 4 years ago. You can bring up Brandon McManus, but other than that, I don't consider Justin Simmons a franchise tag. That was a Band-Aid. The Broncos had no other leverage in those discussions but to apply the franchise tag. They didn't want to come up to Simmons' price tag. And that's all it came down to. They didn't want to give up that money. They want to hoard this money for whatever reason for next year. If they wanted Simmons to get done, they would have gotten it done. If they want to reward Phillip Lindsay, they would have rewarded Phillip Lindsay. Instead, they went out and signed Melvin Gordon, and they got Mark Barron. It's choosing outside players over in-house talent.
The grass is greener. It's the grass is greener on the other side mentality. Glenn wants to know, Chad, are you disappointed about Kendall Hinton? I wouldn't. Disappointed is a strong word. No, I mean, all the buzz I picked up on him in camp was that he was doing well, but I think he failed to eclipse Trinity Benson in terms of that kind of gadgety guy that they could play. If they needed to call him up to the active, he had returner capability. He's fast, he's twitchy. You can use him in a lot of different ways if push comes to shove, and Benson just outplayed him. Fred Brown's a guy who is a very accomplished wide receiver who also got signed to the practice squad. And he's a guy that does everything well, but he doesn't do anything great. He's kind of a jack of all, master of none. Both were kept. So it's unfortunate for Hinton, former college quarterback, but to say I was disappointed, not really. Zach, here's a question from Charles. Uh-oh. I'm having internet problems. Dang it. All right, we got to wrap it up. Charles wants to know, though, last year this is on Periscope, last year Denver dominated the Titans on defense, held Derrick Henry to just a few yards. Can they do it again? What's your bold prediction there, Zach?
I think he's going to get his, I'm not going to say a 100-yard game or a 5-yard game, but Derrick Henry's going to get his yardage. I think, though, having Jarrell Casey in the middle of that defense now, on top of having Mike Purcell, on top of having a collection of run-stopping inside linebackers, they're going to hold Henry and limit him enough to win the game. I don't know if it's going to be, under 100 yards or specific yardage or one touchdown or no touchdowns. He's still a great running back, but I think the Broncos have the horses to keep him relatively in check.
We'll see. I'm a lot more skeptical about it without Todd Davis. I'll be honest with you. I'm not going to lie. I'm a lot more skeptical this time around. Dennis Woods jumping in. Appreciate you, my friend. Bonafide superstar in Michigan. No questions, really. Appreciate your input and analysis of the cuts. Hashtag state of being indeed. Really appreciate you, Dennis. Also, Terry jumping back in on Super Chat. Thank you, bro. Over under on Casey's sack total week 1. Zach, I'm putting it at, I'd say 1.5 is the over under. You taking over or under?
I think 1.5. I'm going to hit that on the mark, Chad. I think that's what he'll end up with. But I also think he's going to make a lot of plays against the run, like I just mentioned. If they do contain Derrick Henry and they do win this game, I think Jarrell Casey will be a big reason why. He will get after Tannehill. And like I mentioned, pressure is production too. It doesn't have to be a sack. But if he's flushing out Tannehill and Von Miller gets the sack or Bradley Chubb, it's good enough for me.
Ariel. Everyone knows Ariel. Long time no see, it feels like, on Periscope this time around. Can't wait to talk to you guys after games. We're looking forward to it. The gut reactions this year are going to be epic. And, you guys, how much love you've shown us this year. I mean, just since we started doing the live streams, taking the podcast to the live stream format, we're thinking about doing other things, and we're going to unveil it this football season, including the idea of streaming during the games. If you guys show up, continue to support like you've done, you'll make it well worth our time, and we look forward to that. So we'll see. We'll debut that potentially on Monday Night Football, but no matter what, of course, you're going to expect the gut reactions after each and every game. And then Zach, Ariel, and Jay want to know when we live stream. So Mile High Huddle, it's every day from the 6 o'clock Mountain Time to 7. So that's 8 to 9 Eastern. Zach and I, we go 4 of the 7 days. We're Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday. But there's a Mile High Huddle live stream podcast every single day, 7 days a week from the 6 to 7 local time on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, etc. All right, we're about out of time. So let me make sure we're not leaving anybody out in the cold. And I'm just worried my internet, there was an outage in my area today. So I'm worried that there are some vestiges left over from that. Desmond, appreciate you, Desmond. And Desmond, if you're on Twitter, this goes to all of the newer names we don't recognize on Super Chat. We love you. We appreciate you. We welcome you. Make sure you reach out to us on Twitter and connect so that we can shout you out after this podcast. Desmond says, hi, guys. Keep up the good work. Love what you're doing. And Zach's facial expressions make me laugh. Much love. Appreciate that, Desmond. Seriously.
Hey, Desmond, whatever to keep you coming back. Whatever I can do. So appreciate you watching.
Jay Ritchie, go to huddleuppod.com for the swag. Huddleuppod.com. Get your swag on. Get a hat, get a t-shirt, get a hoodie, whatever floats your boat. We appreciate the support, as always. Big John Mortensen, our over-the-road truck driver member of this community. It's good to have you in the stream, my friend. Rocking the MJ face mask, which you can also get at huddleuppod.com. He says, I catch you live. What up, Chad and Zach? I guess since Todd Davis has 2 calf injuries that convinced the Broncos to let him go. Go Broncos. Broncos rock. That's worth mentioning, Zach, that there are some injury concerns with Davis. Maybe there is a setback in the calf. Maybe they just are sick of worrying about Todd Davis staying healthy because he had the one calf last year on the different leg, and then the other leg gets the calf this year. I'm sure health factored in somewhat to the team's decision.
But this calf injury supposedly wasn't, and Fangio said it himself, it wasn't as severe as the one last year. So I don't really think the injury came into play so much. I really do think it was a cost-cutting move. They wanted that money back against the cap to either hoard it for next year or to spend it on someone this year. But I don't think the injury was the reason that Davis was released.
All right, gang, we have got to wrap it up for tonight. Thanks to each and every one of you for spending some time with us. Honestly, we're devastated that it didn't go perfectly. Kristie had some technical glitches. I don't know what it was. Everything was good before we went live, nice and stable and good. So our thoughts are with her. We'll catch her on the flip-flop, of course. But thank you, Kristie, for spending some time with us at the top of the show.
Yes.
Always great, Zach, talking to the queen of MHH. And, man, we've had some bad luck with the technical side the 2 nights we've had her on.
We'll try to get third time's a charm, Chad. We'll try in the future. Maybe sometime next month to get her back on. And it was good, though. It was insightful, and I liked her answers, and I thought she represented Broncos country very well as the queen of this podcast.
Amen. All right, gang, make sure you're following the podcast on Twitter at Huddle Up Pod. All of you should be doing that, especially our Super Chat superstars. Make sure you connect with us. Either reach out to myself or Zach, and then also follow at Huddle Up Pod, and also at Mile High Huddle. You can follow my partner, Zack Kelberman, on Twitter at Kelberman NFL, myself at Chad and Jensen, and our producer, John K, at John K MHH. Zach, we didn't get a chance to talk about it tonight, but tomorrow night we'll address how the signing of the Titans signing to Jadeveon Clowney, how that's going to affect things next Monday night. We'll get to all that tomorrow. But in the meantime, enjoy your Labor Days, everybody. Hopefully you are having some time off and kicking back and enjoying your families and your friends and whatnot. And Zach, for you and I, it's Labor Day it's appropriately titled Labor Day because we'll be working our butt off.
That's right.
Covering the team. But have a great day tomorrow, Zach, and we'll talk Monday night.
You too, Chad, and everyone else out there. Stay safe, stay responsible, and have a good day tomorrow. We'll see you guys tomorrow night.
Mile high salute to our Super Chat superstars. Love you. Appreciate you so much. Means everything to us. But we'll be back in the saddle tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Mountain, 8 p.m. Eastern. Until then, for Zack Kelberman, I'm Chad Jensen. We'll see you then.